So she went and enrolled us in maybe mid-August of '79, and as soon as she enrolled us, we started being followed around town and being asked when we were going back to Anderson and where we lived and all that. And we weren't entirely surprised by that because Dad had told us from the time we were able to reason that people were going to, there were going to be white people that hated us because we were black or because we were mixed. There might be some black people that hated us because we were too white. And, just to never let that kind of thing bother us, but that it was very possible. And and we knew Elwood's history too. So when it started to happen, we knew kind of what was going on, and we'd tell Mom about it. And so that went on for a couple of weeks, and then at our first day of school there, during the school day, I had a student and a teacher tell me that would be our only day in school there. And sure enough, that night, not long after we went to bed, it was probably around 9 o'clock or so, a little after, and big glow went up over the front curtains. And we hollered at Mom that something was on fire in the front yard. And so we all went running to the front window, and there was a cross out there burning. So, of course, Mom called the police, and who were there remarkably fast, I thought. But she called the police, and then while they were in the house, we got a phone call. I actually was the one who answered the phone. Guy, told me to put my mom on. Then he told her to get the F out of town. And then she was subsequently warned that, the house would be next if she didn't get us out of town, because we didn't leave right off the bat. I was 10 when it happened, and when she decided, and I'm sure it was in conversation with Dad also, that we would go back to Anderson. At 10, I kind of thought, that's just giving them what they want. We shouldn't be leaving. And so, I kind of thought she was giving in at the time. But then, in retrospect, and again, like you said, even reading the newspapers and reading, the tone of the town at the time, I know that there were undoubtedly Klansmen within, the police department, things like that. So, it was for her to speak out about it at all. It was, like you said, it was an act of activism, especially to go into the newspaper and have something to say also. She was interviewed, at first when she was interviewed by the Indianapolis stations, I think she, they kept her, darkened out, but everybody knew who she was. So, it was, in retrospect, it was a brave thing for her to, she stayed in town, knowing that there was a target on her. And, Dad, I mean, he was black, but he grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. So, I think he had his own, issues over on the kind of the east side of Anderson, because by the time, he was growing up, Anderson was sort of being segregated without being segregated, so to speak. And most of the black people lived on the west side of town, and, Dad was one of the few that lived on the east side of town, and like I said, grew up in a white neighborhood. He had a lot of good white friends, but I think he grew up with he saw the he got some of that being in a white part of town. He got some of the racism and stuff too. So he had to learn a balanced way of thinking about things, and to not just go off the deep end hating everybody because they hated him. And he kind of taught that to us too, that somebody hates you for something superficial, that's their problem, not yours.
Do you have any advice for future generations who are facing opposition?
Again, it's just to stand up for yourself, but you don't need to do it in a violent fashion or anything like that. Just you got to make your voice heard. You got to make sure that people know what's right, what the truth is, and then eventually the truth will take hold. If you give it to people enough times, it'll take hold. But if you resort to violence, I mean, you've kind of stooped to the level of whoever your oppressor is, whether it's because you're black or Hispanic or gay or whatever it is. If you stoop to their level, then you've instantly lost your credibility, and your fight's going nowhere. So that would be be my advice.